Welcome everyone. Glad to see you on my channel. Today I will tell you about an unusual story, an amazing story about companionship and love. I wish you a pleasant audience.
Help! Selena was tearing her throat out, even though she knew no one would hear her. I'm here. She was crying. There was snow all around, and most importantly, there were wolves howling somewhere nearby. It was a clear day. Selena was graduating from school. She knew she had her whole life ahead of her now. She walked home in the morning and smiled. Today, they had welcomed the dawn with the whole class. And now, when there was still no one on the streets, she was walking down the sidewalk, joyful in her heart. "Selena, is that you?" She heard her mom's voice. "Why are you awake?" The girl was surprised. "Today, an important guest will come to my father. Here, I'm getting ready." She wiped her hands on the apron, which was tied on her. "Good. Now I'll change and help you." Though she hadn't slept all night, she was still strong. "Why don't you rest?" Mother suggested it. "No, I don't feel like sleeping at all." She went to her room. After that, she and her mother cooked, cut and mixed in the kitchen. And by dinner time, so many dishes were ready that it was possible to feed 10 people. "That's it. Now we can rest." The mother looked at the prepared treats. "And who should come?" the girl asked the woman. "A friend of her father's. They used to work together." The mother didn't know. Well, this information did not give the girl anything. She went to her room and sat in front of the mirror. She liked to sit there, looking at her reflection, sometimes dreaming about the future. Now unraveled her hair, brushed it, and wondered what awaited her. "I'm home." She heard her father come in. "When are the guests coming?" his wife asked. Any minute now. Selena knew her father was now looking at his watch. The doorbell rang, and everyone in the hallway fussed. "What's the big deal about this guest that mom and dad are acting like this?" the girl thought. She went out to help her mother and was immediately seated at the table. "Hello." A man looked at her. He wasn't young, but he was handsome. "Good afternoon." Selena blushed for some reason. "Meet my daughter. This is Sam, a good friend of mine," her father told her. "Selena," she sat down next to her mom. "Wow, and you didn't tell me you were hiding such a beauty here." The man began to speak. "Here, just graduated from high school," boasted the proud parent. "Great," said the guest, and then they continued their meal. Selena saw how masculine he was, speaking correctly and beautifully, sat and looked at Sam. "It's time to say goodbye," said the evening father's friend. He went to the door. While looking at Selena, she looked at him too. "Well, everyone, have a safe trip." Shook his hand. The landlord shook his hand. When the door was closed, his mother went into the room to clear the table. Selena followed her. "Daddy, who is he?" The daughter wanted to ask this at the table, but did not dare. "Military, then worked in the organs, and now appointed head of the zone," said the man while taking plates from his mother and carrying them to the kitchen. "I see," thought the girl. "Why are you interested in him?" Father became curious. "You cannot ask," flared up the girl. "Why are you reacting like that?" The parents looked at each other. Selena did not answer anything else, silently collected everything that was left on the table, took it to the kitchen, and went to her room. In the evening, she thought about Sam. He was just as she had imagined a real man to be. With these thoughts, the girl fell asleep. Selena was going to enter technical school. Becoming an accountant was her dream. Even as a child, she came to the place where her mother worked, sat at the table, and filled out different papers, as if writing something out. "Ready?" her mom asked her that morning when she had to go to the educational institution. Yes, Selena nodded. She walked down the stairs, looking in the mailbox. It had been a month and a half since Sam had been their guest. The first letter from him came practically 2 weeks after that. The girl herself does not know why she looked in the box. She had never done that before. And then she pulled out the envelope. At first she saw the name. She thought it was for her father, but then she noticed her own name. Selena clutched the envelope to her chest. From then on, she checked the mail every day by herself. Incoming, the girl came home. No one doubted it. Her mom smiled. And Selena did not listen to her. She hurried to her room to read what Sam wrote to her. And he sang in his letters how much he liked her and wanted to take her with him. And the girl believed in his love at first sight. "Mom, I need to talk to you." She came home from school. It was December. About what? She was always ready to listen to her daughter. About Sam. Selena looked around the room, though there was no one there, but she was so afraid that her father would find out that she feared it even now. Sam, who Sam was talking about. The woman made a surprised face. Well, a friend of her father's who was visiting, the girl reminded her. "I see, what about him?" Mom couldn't understand what her daughter had to do with a grown man. "We're in love," the daughter blushed. "What do you mean?" The woman clutched her heart. "It's just, he writes to me. He wants to take me back to his place." She wanted to get up to bring the letters, but she saw what was going on with her mom and decided not to. "Selena, what are you doing?" She was fainting. "Don't tell Daddy yet," the girl asked. "Oh, what on earth is going on?" the mother began to wail. The daughter realized that there was no need to continue the conversation. She got up and went into the room. Now she'd already regretted that she had started this conversation, but it was necessary to prepare at least the mother. Sam had written that he would come on vacation in April and then take her with him. Her father would still find out, but it would be his friend who would tell him. But her mother, she felt sorry for. The rest of the time, Selena was very quiet. She didn't go anywhere to and from school. "Why are you always home?" her father asked her. Just not wanting to go anywhere, he still didn't know anything. Her mother walked around the apartment, sighed, but kept silent. Sometimes her husband thought that she was worried about something, asked, but the woman still just sighed heavily and went to the kitchen. Spring came. Selena waited for the man she had been thinking about for almost a year to arrive. She was afraid of her father, but she knew Sam was persistent and he would get what he wanted. "Mother, set the table. A dear guest is coming." He hung up the phone one weekend afternoon. Selena's heart fluttered. She looked at her mother, who was standing on the doorstep of the kitchen. "What a darling. He wants to steal our daughter from us. The old geezer," the woman muttered to herself under her nose. "What are you saying?" At that moment, her husband came in. "Nothing. I'm glad, I say, that Sam is coming." The wife did not turn to him. And so, like last time, the man arrived. They sat down at the table. Selena dressed up, but was shy to go out. It's not like pouring out your feelings on paper when you're alone in the room. "Selena, how long do you have to wait?" shouted her father. On coming, she entered the hall, a blush flooding her cheeks. "Hello," Sam stood up to greet her. "I'm glad to see you." She stood in front of them, so young with red cheeks. "You?" Her dad looked at her. "Yes, that's the only reason I came," coughed the guest. He was already standing in front of his beloved's parents. "I don't get it." Selena's father stood up too. "Listen, don't get too nervous. I liked your daughter back then. I wrote to her. And then it started," Sam said and looked mainly at the woman who was sitting on the couch. "What do you mean?" The father looked at his daughter and his friend, speechless. "Yes, you got it right. I'm on vacation for 2 weeks. And after that we're leaving." He took the girl's hand. "That's a friend." The man grabbed his head. "Yes, I almost forgot." He took a ring out of his pocket and put it on the girl's finger. Sam had already arranged everything. While he was on vacation, they were promised to be signed. Today, not many people were already talking, so the man got up and invited Selena to go for a walk. The parents had no choice but to agree. "Did you know?" The woman was immediately questioned by her husband as the doors closed. "I'm sorry," she lowered her eyes. "What is it? How could he do such a thing? And I as a fool. Him with open arms." My father almost cried. A week later, Selena told her parents to come to the registry office. Whatever they said, nothing could affect the girl's decision. What about school? Mom asked. Nothing, so I'll finish studying. The girl, what she planned, that's what she did. Sam bought her a beautiful dress, in which she was today. It really suited her blue eyes and dark hair. The bride and groom were different. You could tell he was older and she, the young girl next to him. You don't have any regrets? Sam asked her after the check-in. What do you mean? She wondered and laughed back. I can't believe I'm so lucky. He pulled her close to him. When Selena arrived where her husband lived, she was horrified. Constant cold, hardly any civilization. But she kept quiet, didn't say anything about it. Sam, what am I supposed to do? She asked. It was summer outside, but the weather bore little resemblance to this time of year. I don't know, Sue. Knit, the kids will come soon. You'll raise them, he was sure. Maybe I should get a job somewhere. She was ready to do anything, just to avoid the time at home, which was dragging on very slowly. Would you like a job at the office? He asked. What do you have to do there? That question came out automatically, and she was all for it. Counting, he laughed. Good, she hugged him. Then it's agreed. You can go out tomorrow, look, learn, and then start working. He was ready to do anything for her. The next day, the girl was already sitting in a small wooden building, where there were 2 other women besides her. Here, look, here are the magazines, one of them showed her. Good. Selena began to remember what she had been taught for a year at the technical school. All day long, she looked through some household books and other things. By evening, Selena was sure she could do everything on her own now. She wanted to wait for her husband here, but he was still gone, so she packed up and went home alone. Sam never came home for the night. In the morning, Selena was back at the office. Did yours come last night? The woman who had shown her around yesterday asked her. No, why? Did something happen? She looked at her new acquaintance. Yes, they went to the village, had fun there, Natalie told her. What do you mean? Selena was still naive about it. She didn't understand how you could live with your wife and go to someone else. Is this your first time married? Everyone in the room laughed. Yeah, she didn't realize they were joking. Selena, you have to keep an eye on the man. Natalie wagged her finger. But Sam loves me so much, she cried. Oh, what love these days? The girls laughed again. The girl sat looking out the window. She couldn't understand anything. In the end, decided not to listen to what she was told and asked her husband directly in the eyes. Selena, I'm home. It came late at night. Sam, where were you yesterday? She didn't wait for anything. It was important for her to know. What kind of questions? A man's not used to being talked to like that. A simple question, I'm your wife. I was worried, and you just didn't show up. She looked at him point blank. At work, he froze at first, then continued to undress. That's not what the women say. She chopped off her shoulder. Listen to them more. He walked past her into the bathtub. In the evening, they ate dinner in silence. It was as if Selena's eyes had been opened. For the first time, she regretted coming here. Why hadn't she wanted to get to know the man? Her mother had warned her. Are you coming? Sam asked her this morning. Drive, I'll walk. She didn't feel like riding next to him in the car. Suit yourself. He slammed the door. The man realized he was guilty in front of his wife. He didn't know how to make it up to her. In the middle of the day, he came to her office. Can we talk? He asked Selena. Yes. She looked at her co-workers and walked out. Look, it must be hard for you here. Let's get some assistance, Sam suggested. Where are you going to get them? Selena made big eyes. I've got some people who are trying to get parole. I can get them. He nodded his head at the brick building. I don't even know. She looked back at the door. You're handling bales, logs, things like that. He didn't know what else to say. Okay, Selena agreed then. It was really hard for him and the girls. Then come with me. He beckoned her to follow him. Sam said something to the soldier. He nodded and then ran off. In a few minutes, several young men were standing in front of Selena and Sam. "Take your pick," her husband pointed at them. Selena had been looking at the ones standing across from them for a while now. They were all kind of the same, but one was very different. His dark eyes, squint, and something else caught her gaze. It was scary and satisfying. She picked out 3, including this stranger she'd been paying attention to. "Well, boys, consider yourselves lucky," the supervisor told them. Now it was their duty to help her with whatever the girl said. "They were doing a great job," Natalie said, as she watched the young men working hard through the window. It was winter outside, it was very cold, so only the 3 of them were working. Selena pretended to watch the men, but she only had eyes for the one. She would give him sugar or cigarettes when she had the chance. He would just stare and smirk, and Selena's eyes were breathtaking. "Thank you," they'd come to sign. Yeah, he looked up and winked at her. Selena knew these inmates knew her name. Of course they did. Her cum's wife. She didn't. But that was just at first. She looked down the lists. The names of those 2 didn't interest her much. And this one with the dark eyes was John. Here, he came to work when the first snow began to melt and gave the girl some flowers. They were actually dry sticks, with some feathers on the end, but Selena was pleased. Sam hadn't been around much lately. The girl was offended, so she directed all her attention to John and didn't notice how she fell in love with him. Selena didn't know what he'd done, why he was here, but she didn't care. "Selena, are you crazy?" whispered Natalie when she heard her laughing with her new boyfriend outside the door. "What's the big deal? We were just talking," she replied. Yes, I see. I've been, as you say, for 6 months now." The woman shook her head. "What am I going to do if he's so cute?" Selena couldn't hide her feelings. "Oh girl, be careful. Sam won't forgive you for this." She knew what she was saying. "John will be free soon. He'll be gone and I'll follow him." The girl was sure of herself. Yes, I believe you." Natalie pressed her lips together skeptically. "I don't want to talk about this anymore." Selena looked away from the window, a smile playing on her face. With John, they were getting farther and farther away to talk quietly while they pretended to work. "Will you come with me?" the young man asked her. "Not with you, but behind you," Celine said. "Okay, I'll pass on the information." He took her by the chin with one hand, brought her close to him and looked into her eyes. Selena wanted him to kiss her so badly in those moments, but John didn't. Afterward, they said their goodbyes, not wanting anyone to see them together. He had less than 6 months to stay here. "Sam, can't you see we've become strangers?" Selena asked her husband at home. "What do you want?" He was already regretting taking such a young girl. Yes, to brag in front of friends that there is such a beauty, but she was not good for anything else. Divorce, it was scary, but she said the word. "Okay, but don't regret it." He squinted. "I won't, thanks." She didn't look at him. "What, you've been hitting on a convict?" He'd suspected it for years. He'd been told, but he didn't believe it. "It's none of your business." She purposely didn't bring it up while John was here. Now that he's gone, she could have said something. "Yeah, it's not my business anymore." He came very close to her. Inside Selena, everything trembled with fear. She had seen how cruel her husband could be to prisoners. "Don't," she closed her eyes. "Scum." He leaned over her ear and pushed away from her a little. Selena waited to see if there would be a sequel, but Sam got dressed and left the house. She didn't wait for anything at this point, grabbed her bag, which had been ready for a while now, found her papers, waited a bit, and left the apartment. "To the train station," she said to the driver of the car. "Good." He only nodded. Selena sat on the train, looked out the window, and thought that everything in life should be tried. And now she was going to her lover, where no one would stop them from being together. Selena saw him from the window. He was so beautiful standing on the platform, flowers in his hands. "John, how did you know I was coming?" She ran out to meet him. Coming to the trains, waiting, he pressed her against him. Selena was smiling with her mouth full. She was happy. Now we'll go to my friend's apartment, and then there will be our own, the young man told her. Don't you have a place to live? She was surprised, but her eyes had rose-colored glasses again. Love overshadowed everything. I told you, for now, temporarily, he said in a rough voice. Okay, I get it. She stretched her lips in a smile again. John's friend was out of town at the moment, so for a while, they could stay at his apartment alone. Are you glad I'm here with you? She twirled around the room. And you? He was looking through his notebook. Why do you ask? You know I'd do anything for you. She sat down next to him. I'm glad to. He took her chin in his hand as before, pulling her to him. Selena looked into his eyes and then closed her own. And at that moment, John kissed her. It was their first kiss. Are we getting married? She asked him at night as they lay in bed together. You're so naive. He turned his head toward her and kissed her nose. What do you mean? She lifted herself up and lay on his chest. Of course we'll get married since we have such love. John spoke as if he was laughing at her. The guy went out every morning, came back late at night. Selena wasn't bored. The apartment was such a mess. She wanted to put the place in perfect order. She cooked different dishes, waited for her lover to come home, and he came. The girl thought that's what life is like for two lovers. Where are you? He came home. Hi. She came out into the hallway, wearing a simple but beautiful dress. What smells so good? He sniffed. Your favorite dish, she looked puzzled. After that they would walk to the kitchen. There the hostess would feed her favorite man. Selena never asked John what he did for a living. She would never have believed he was back on the slippery slope. The man was bringing home money, which meant he was working somewhere. Selena was happy. Sometimes she wanted to call her parents, but then she changed her mind. She wanted them to think she was living with Sam. So, are you ready? John asked her one Saturday. For what? She didn't understand. To go to the registry office, he pulled out a simple wedding ring. John, I've been waiting. She went to her room to change. After that, they went to the government office where they were told that they were husband and wife from now on. I am the happiest man on earth, shouted John that day. He invited some friends. They were sitting at some cottage which was near a lake. Bro, congratulations. They shook hands with him. Today, he showed his beloved for the first time to those he trusted as himself. Do you want me to bake a cake tomorrow? Come to us, Celine told them. She wanted everyone to like her. Of course, if the landlord says yes, the young men laughed. John, she looked at her husband. Why me if they want? Let them come. He looked at his friends. From that moment, Celine was once again a happy wife. She knew that her man was the nicest, he would never do anything wrong, and most importantly, she could rely on him. Have you thought about children? He asked her in the evening. Why do you ask? Of course she wanted to, but she didn't want to say it. Let it go on as it was. Just in case you don't want it yet, he admitted and lay on his back. I do. She rested her chin on his chest. A boy will be born. I'll teach him everything. He'll be like Daddy. He put his hand on her back. Come on, but not everything, she smiled, and he immediately understood what she meant. Selena, listen, I will do everything to make you and our future children happy. After these words, the young husband and wife fell asleep. In the morning, as promised, she got up and put the dough, immediately remembered her mother. It was she who taught her to do this. When she peeled the potatoes, she heard her husband wake up. He went to the bathroom. God, what a divine smell. He went to the kitchen. Wait, it's not ready yet. She laughed and slapped his hands. Where are your friends? Even if they don't come, I'll eat everything myself. He sat down on a chair and waited. There was a knock on the door, and Oliver stood on the threshold. Hi, I'm here for the pie, as agreed. He entered the apartment. Can you feel it? John raised a finger in the air. You bet, it smelled like that already in the yard. They went together to the place where Selena was working her magic. Hello. She said hello to her husband's friend, whom she saw for the second time today. What an officious thing to say, hello. He walked over to her and shook her hand lightly. Good. She was not used to all this. 10 minutes later, they were already sitting at the table eating a delicious fresh pie. Where are the others? Selena looked at her friends. I don't know. They probably couldn't. Both of them had their mouths full of pie. All right, you'll get more. She cut them each another slice. When John and Oliver went into the room, Selena was clearing the table and washing the dishes. She didn't mean to. It came out by accident, but she overheard the conversation between the two companions. Did you find out? John asked Oliver. No, Oliver had to go. They spoke in a low voice. At first, Celine wanted to just come in, but when she heard the next frog, she didn't dare. When he comes to visit, we have to vacate the house because we live here illegally, her husband said. Listen, what are you sweating about? Everything will be fine. I'll make a deal, Oliver promised him. Selena went back to the kitchen. There she sat down on a stool, thinking, what if John was back in crime? But as soon as those thoughts crossed her mind, she dismissed them immediately. She didn't want to think bad thoughts. She hadn't heard the beginning of the conversation, and what if it wasn't what she thought it was? Selena, why are you sitting here? Oliver came into the kitchen. What? No, I was just thinking. She was confused. After that, they all went into the hall together. Family life went on. John said that they had to change the apartment. Selena was regretting to part with the nest, which was the first of them with John. Don't feel bad. We'll have our own soon. He pressed Selena against him. The young man did not yet know that his wife was carrying a child under her heart. She didn't tell him. She wanted to come, do everything, set the table, and then tell me. Why are you looking so mysteriously and silent? He saw in the evening how tired his wife was, but she still prepared everything. Soon you will have a son. Selena was very calm. How did you know it was a son? He didn't understand. You want an heir, so you will have a son. She put her hands on her stomach. Beloved, he smiled. From that very evening, the young man began to bring home everything that might be needed in the upbringing of a child. What's all this for? Looked Selena surprised. There was already a crib, a stroller, a bunch of stuff, bottles, nipples, and everything else in the apartment. In case something happens to me, he averted his eyes. What could happen? She didn't finish. She stopped talking. Are you sick? He became agitated. Tell me the truth. Where is all this money coming from? Only now she realized that he doesn't work anywhere, but he has money. I don't think you need to know that. He didn't say anything. John, you're doing it again. She wanted to cry, but at that moment he came to her and hugged her. It's going to be okay, he whispered in her ear. He didn't want her to worry. For the rest of the day, Selena passed quietly. She saw that her husband hadn't stopped anything, but she tried not to think about it so she wouldn't worry. Selena, why don't you go to the hospital? Pulled back the curtain and looked down John. What's going on? She wanted to look too. Nothing, just seeing what the weather was like. He turned to her. It was too early to go to the hospital. The due date was almost 3 weeks away. What if it started sooner? He tried to talk her into it. If you tell me the truth, then maybe I'll go. She stood with her arms at her sides. There's no truth. I'm just worried about you. He averted his eyes again. Then it's okay. I'll go to the hospital in 2 weeks. She sat down on the couch. Good. Her husband agreed with her. Selena saw how nervous he was every day, pacing back and forth in the apartment, asking questions. But as always, John just kept quiet. When it was a week before the doctor's due date, Selena went to the hospital herself, as promised. Ouch, 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 ouch. It hurt, but she didn't scream. Ori, it will be easier, the neighbor advised. No, Selena stood bent over. Shall I call a doctor? She got up from the bed. Yes, the girl barely breathed out. A nurse came running. They went together to the labor room. How Selena was scolded there, that she tolerated so long and did not say anything to anyone. But other than that, everything went well. Thank you, John shouted as the doors of the hospital opened and a package with a blue bow was brought out. Home? The wife asked. Yes, only I've rented another apartment. He didn't let her ask or say anything, covered her mouth with a kiss. And then Selena herself didn't remember what she wanted to ask. They arrived in the new neighborhood. She walked into the apartment and was surprised. Everything that had been lying in a big pile in the old apartment was now disassembled. The crib stood packed, all the things in the dresser. Did you do all this yourself? The young mother marveled. Oliver and I did, smiled the husband. He spent all day with his son, as if he was afraid of losing him. Put him down for a minute. Selena wanted him to pay attention to her too. Look, he's smiling at me, John said. Don't make it up. He can't do that yet. Selena walked over and Oliver was indeed lying there, smiling. I am the luckiest woman, she said. Lately, Selena had been worried about not being able to tell her parents that she had a baby. What would she tell them? Sorry for lying to you for so long. No, she couldn't. Tom was 6 months old when John came home late at night. Selena woke up when he slammed the door. She expected John to come into the room, but he wasn't there. Where are you? It became scary to the girl that it might not have been her husband. Here, he moaned. Selena immediately jumped out of bed, ran out into the hallway. John was there half sitting, half lying down. What? She leaned over him and saw that he was covered in something red. She realized it immediately, started unbuttoning it. Stay out of it. Her husband rudely pushed her away. You need help. She sat down beside him. It's okay. He wrinkled his nose. I can see it's nothing normal. She went to the kitchen, got the first aid kit, brought it out, and handed it to her husband. I'm sorry. I could hear him breathing heavily. And in the morning, the police arrived. Selena had been expecting it, so she wasn't really surprised. John was almost unconscious when they took him away. She never knew what had happened to him. Sleep, son. She sat up and stroked the baby on his back. Tears ran down her cheeks. He had never listened to her. He had started all over again, even though he had promised that nothing like that would happen again. Selena was scared. What if someone came to her? What would she do then? She had a small child in her arms. Every night when it got dark, she shut the windows and kept the lights off. She took Tom in her arms and sat there until the baby fell asleep. Then she lay down herself. Mommy, hello. She decided to make this call. Daughter, where have you been? The woman spoke excitedly. Everything is fine. I'm happy. I have a son was born. You and Daddy are now grandparents, said Selena in a joyful voice, so as not to show how scared she was. Do you want me to come to you? Where are you now? Her mother asked. No, it's okay. We'll come to you ourselves, promised the daughter. Before she dialed the number, she thought she would talk to her parents now and then go to them. But if John had ill wishes, wouldn't they know where her mom lived? And just as she was talking, the thought struck her. Selena sat staring at the phone. She didn't know who to call. She had no relatives or friends in this town. Oliver. She even jumped up from the couch. Selena walked over to the nightstand where the phone stood. John's address book was always lying there. She never opened it, but he looked at the phones there. Oliver. She dialed the number quickly, but there were only long beeps. Selena sighed and hung up, but an hour later, she dialed the young man's number again, and then again and again, but no one answered. Oliver, where are you? She said into the void. A month later, Oliver called. Hello. He seemed to be listening to her mood. Oliver, where have you been? She screamed into the phone. Can I come over? He spoke quickly. Of course, she cried. They didn't speak again on the phone. Half an hour later, the young man was at her house. What happened? Where is John now? What has he done? She beat his chest with her fists and cried. Calm down, somehow. I'll tell you everything. He led her into the kitchen so that the child would not see how the mother was behaving. How can I calm down when this has happened, sitting here, locked up, not showing my nose to the street? She was still crying. You're doing the right thing, Oliver, just as John had done, went to the window and looked down. Who's there? Selena yelled. No one, he turned to her. What are you looking at then? She couldn't help but scream. Selena, please calm down. Let's talk calmly. He took her by the shoulders. Now she went and washed her face. She returned to the kitchen already without tears, but her voice was still shaking. John's in a bad situation. I won't say what kind of situation. Less you know, more you sleep. But you need to get out of here for a while. He sat in front of her, holding her hands. Where to? She didn't understand. I rented an apartment in the village next door. I need to live there for a while. He tried to look into her eyes. Alone? She looked at him blankly. Why alone with Tony? You want me to come over? He spoke very calmly. Okay, Selena felt like she didn't have a life anymore, not having someone around to support and help. Then get ready. He went to the window again. The girl gathered her things and her son, turned to Oliver. Ready? He could see that she wasn't herself, maybe because of the tantrum she'd had recently. Yes, she looked at her son. The young man had him in his arms. Let's go then. They went down to the street, got into a car that was parked around the corner and drove off. Oliver brought her to where he said he would. There was a small house there. From the outside it seemed unremarkable, like so many others. But inside, everything was just as it should be. Darling, you have to live here for a little while. A year and a half. He sat down in front of her again, looked into her face, and spoke. Wow, a little while, she grinned. I'll be there for you, I promise. He stood up and pulled her against him, just like John always did. Okay, is there groceries here? She looked up. Yes. Oliver led her into the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator and all the cabinets. Wow, were you preparing for war? Selena saw that those were bursting with cereal, canned goods, and other food. You don't need to go out yet. He pressed his finger to his lips. I realized she was no longer as confused as she had seemed before. Stay then, and I'll be right there. He kissed her cheek and walked out of the cabin. Selena closed the doors and went to settle into her new home. Apparently, the place had been cleaned recently because everywhere was clean. Then Selena decided to make something to eat. She turned around and saw Tom crawling towards her. The boy was making attempts to get up and was already doing so against the wall. The house had everything she needed to live, so Selena didn't need to go out, and she didn't want to. When a picture of John came into view, Selena would cry so hard you'd think her husband was dead. But she couldn't help it. 3 weeks passed. There was a knock on the door. Her heart began to pound frantically in her chest. Who is it? She came over. Selena, it's me, Oliver, answered the guest. Startled, she opened. I'm sorry I've been gone so long. You're probably out of groceries too. He brought several large bags inside. I've got enough for another year, she laughed. I see you're feeling better, he smiled too. Yes, I started knitting. You know how soothing it is. She showed him the different products. While she was learning, so it was mostly scarves. You should definitely get one. He tried to encourage her again. Stop doing that. You don't have to. She gave him a palm on the shoulder. It's okay. John was my friend. Oliver continued to do something and Selena froze. Why was he? She stared at him point blank. No, it's okay. It's just, he's not around right now, he realized. Tell me the truth. They took him away. He was unconscious, Selena mumbled. Why would you do that? He wouldn't want you to know that, Oliver lowered his eyes. Tell me, she insisted. Your husband will probably go to jail, and the sentence will be a decent one, the young man exhaled. I knew it. She covered her face, but for some reason she didn't want to cry. "Selena, it's going to be okay." He put his arm around her shoulders. "Yes, I know." She took his hand and pulled it away. "I'm sorry." He was embarrassed. After that, Oliver started coming almost every day. He brought Selena flowers, paid his respects, gave Tom gifts. "What's all this for?" she asked him. "I like you. Why ruin your youth?" The young man did not hide anything. "Oliver, I cannot. I have John." She turned away from him because as a friend he suited her, but lately she noticed that he does not behave quite so. "So what? You're going to go and become the boss's wife again?" He sat down on the couch. "What?" She made big eyes. "You thought he hadn't told anyone?" grinned the guest. "No," she tilted her head. How much she didn't know about her husband. "Did he write you any letters?" He asked another question. "No," she shook her head. "Did you?" As if there was an interrogation going on. "No," she said quietly. What was there to talk about then? Oliver was very sure. "Still, you're his friend." Selene couldn't go for such a betrayal. They stayed in that settlement for exactly 8 months. After that, Oliver said, everything calmed down. And when Selena returned to the apartment, which, as it turned out, her husband had bought while she was in the hospital, and he'd put it in Selena's name, so he must have known there'd be trouble. That's when she realized that it would be difficult to live alone. Her husband used to provide for her. Then when she was in the village, Oliver, and now. "Hi," he called her. "How are you?" "Good, will you come over?" Now Selena wondered what Oliver would think of her. Yes, he would. He was ready to rush to her at a moment's notice. She'd arranged a romantic dinner for them that night. "Hey, come on in. I'll put Tom to bed, and then I'll be there," she whispered to Oliver when she opened the door. "Okay," he also replied. Selena was in the kitchen in a few minutes. "Is today some kind of holiday?" the young man asked. "No, I just wanted to sit with you and talk." She was shy. "By candlelight?" He raised an eyebrow. "Why not? Let it be romantic." If there was a light on, he would notice her cheeks flaming. "Okay." Oliver opened the sparkling wine, pouring it into glasses. They took a sip each, silent. The young man looked at the girl. He liked her very much. "Do you know when I noticed you?" he asked. "No." Her cheeks never stopped burning. "Then, at the dacha, after your wedding, I could not understand how a brutal man like John could seduce someone like you." He took her hand. "Why couldn't he?" Selena didn't understand. "I don't know. You're so delicate, so vulnerable." He kissed her palm. "Oliver, do you think it's right?" She meant their relationship. "I think John will understand." He pulled his chair closer to hers. "I'm kind of uncomfortable," Selena said shyly. "It's okay, I'm not rushing things. We need a divorce first, and then we'll see what we do." He averted his eyes. "I didn't think it would be necessary to get a divorce." She got up from her chair. "You don't want to legitimize the relationship in the future?" was surprised Oliver. "I don't know. It seemed like the evening had been ruined by all this talk." "Okay, come here. You don't need to think about that right now." He pulled Selena to him and sat her on his lap. Oliver came to Selena every day now. At first, it was just kisses and hugs. After 6 months, they were a full-fledged family. "Dad," Tom ran up to Oliver. "Selena." She was looking at the girl. "If you don't mind." "I don't mind either," said the one. "Of course." He lifted the boy on his knees. They looked at something in a book. "You still haven't decided to get a divorce?" he asked her once. "Look, do you feel that bad?" She didn't understand it. Sometimes at night, Selena wondered why John didn't write to her. On the one hand, she understood him. Perhaps he didn't want his wife and son to worry. But on the other hand, she knew everything about him. Why not write? She would be supportive. No, it was okay. Oliver had said so, but it wasn't true. He didn't want to fight, so he didn't insist on anything. Now that they were living together, Selena could see that Oliver, just like John had once done, was leaving home. He had plenty of money, but not enough for anything. Oliver, tell me the truth. They had breakfast. Why would you do that? He poured coffee for himself and her. I don't want it to turn out like it did with John. I won't get over it. She was telling the truth. I promise you I'll never leave you, and if anything bad happens, I'll always come to your rescue. He kissed her. I believe you. She nuzzled her cheek against his. Tom went to daycare. He came in bruised all the time. What happened again? Selena asked her son. Why are they teasing me? Frowned the boy. What do they say? The mother was curious. That my daddy is in jail. He folded his arms across his chest. You see, there's your daddy at home. Why believe in other people's gossip? She pointed at Oliver. He didn't interfere with her upbringing, afraid he'd do something wrong. When Tom's kindergarten graduation was in September and he had to go to school, Selena decided to go to her parents. Are you coming with us? She asked Oliver. If you'll take me, he teased Tom. Sure. What are you asking? She walked over to them. They planned when it would be. After that, Selena called her parents, so it wouldn't be spontaneous. Oh my God, daughter, it's been years. Selena heard her mom crying. Over the weekend, they got in the car as a family and drove. Oliver, can I ask you something? The girl turned to him. Sure, why do you ask? He put his hand on her knee. Mom will ask a lot of questions. She doesn't know who I left with or where I went. She can only assume. So let's just say you were the husband after Sam. If we don't, imagine the questions, she said, staring straight ahead. Of course we will, he agreed with her. When they drove up to the house where the girl lived, tears came to her eyes. Honey, what are you doing? Oliver looked at his beloved. I don't know, nostalgia or something, she shrugged. Mom, who lives here? My son asked from the back seat. Grandma, she turned to kiss him, but he turned away. I'm not little anymore, he told her. Come on, let's go. She got out of the car and helped Tom out. Oliver got everything out of the trunk, and they headed for the driveway. Who's there? I heard it from behind the door. Mom, Selena said. Daughter. The woman opened the door and froze. She didn't know who to hug first, but she pressed the girl against her. Hi, Grandma, Tom said. How big you are already. She leaned over and hugged him too. Hello, it was Oliver's turn to give the woman. Anyone who remembers the past is. He didn't finish. Okay, understood. Laughed the girl and sat down at the table. It had been so long since they'd seen each other that they'd done nothing but talk and talk. Oliver and his father went out on the balcony a few times, and the mother and daughter kept chattering like magpies. At some point, Tom got tired of it and went to bed, and the women cleared the table and sat in the kitchen for a long time. Oh, Selena, I didn't think you'd have such a life, said her mother, folding her arms across her chest, and she didn't know the whole truth. It's okay, you don't have to worry, her daughter reassured her. And now I see that you're doing well, so there's nothing to worry about. You just come to visit, or bring Tom. They hugged again, for the 100th time that evening. It was a good time, driving back. Yeah, your parents are great, Oliver agreed. Am I still going to Grandma's? Shouted Tom. Sure, laughed the parents. They were home, all was well. Oliver went out, as before, and came back sometimes at night, sometimes in the morning, but Selena didn't say anything to him. As long as he didn't come back like John had, she thought about it all the time. Are you ready? Oliver came into the room. He had to go to the lineup. Yes, shouted the son and mom. Today, everyone was happy and cheerful, and in the evening, the man invited the family to a restaurant. The first class went quickly. It was difficult, but Tom tried. In the summer, he asked to go to his grandmother. That's where they sent him. And Oliver and Selena flew south to the sea. Everything was good in the family. No one ever fought. Everyone loved each other. Sometimes Selena looked at her son and saw John in him. She never told him about his own father, she thought. That the time would come, he would ask, and she would tell. Every summer, the boy went to his grandmother's house, and she loved him. Until the 5th grade, Tom generally loved it, and then began to be capricious. Mother and father did not insist on the fact that he must necessarily spend the whole summer at his grandmother's house and may go for a month. The boy agreed to such a compromise. This morning, he had to go to the lineup. Tom was already in 7th grade. Did Oliver call? His mother shouted from the room. No, the son answered her. Strange, he could not miss such a thing, could not understand where he was. Selena. It's okay, we'll go alone, approached her son. How mature you are, she kissed him on the top of his head. Selena put on shoes, the guy's shoes, he took his backpack, mom flowers, they left the apartment. It wasn't that far to school, so they got there quickly. That's it, don't go any further. The boy stopped near the gate. What's wrong? Mom made a surprised face. Mom, I'm going to the 7th grade, not the 1st. He looked serious. Okay, go. She saw her parents standing there. Oliver never showed up for the lineup, and he wasn't home that evening either. Selena was nervous. She called him, but his phone was unavailable. Oliver, please call or answer, she asked, looking at the phone, but he was silent. A month passed, the man never returned. Selena was afraid to contact the authorities because the man was connected to crime. She was beginning to think that the same thing had happened to her husband. Mom, why are you so sad? Tom came up to her. They were preparing for the new year. Where is Oliver? Why isn't he with us? She looked at the tree she wanted to decorate. Let's go outside, go to the square. Look at the big slide, the lights, Tom called her. Let's go. Selena waved her hand. Why should she suffer when she had a son who didn't need her decadent mood? They left the apartment, and just as she was about to close the door, someone shoved her back in. Mom, Tom shouted. The door closed in his face, and he was left on the landing. You weren't expecting me. Selena saw John's angry face. What are you doing here? She tried to get out of his arms. I came home, and here my wife is living the good life, he grinned. What are you talking about? Her eyes were big with terror. Are you afraid? He laughed. John, you're insane. Her voice trembled. Okay, Luv. He pushed her away, then opened the door. The guy had been chiseling at her the whole time. Who are you? He ran into the apartment and saw his mom lying on the floor. Tom, it's me, your dad, he said in a completely different voice. What? He looked at the woman and the man. Yes, Tom, it's true. He's your real dad, Selena confirmed. You told me. The boy stopped talking. John walked over to his wife. He lifted her off the floor with one tug. So, Selena, is dinner ready? Husband's back from prison, he said with a smear. Yes, now, she went to the kitchen on woozy legs. There were so many thoughts in her head that she could not grasp any of them. The woman decided to act casual, as if nothing had happened. She heated up what had been prepared, put it on plates, and called her husband over. Oh wow, Royal. He rubbed his hands together and sat down. Why are you acting like this? She sat down across from him. How? He started chewing. Like it's my fault. She was picking at her salad with her fork. Who's to blame me? He looked up at her. You came that night. You didn't explain anything. Then they took you away. What was I to think? Why didn't you write? Selena cried. What could I explain to you? Everything was said to Oliver, who then took you away. Anger began to appear in her voice again. John, I was hurting, and I was also scared, and Oliver helped me. She tried to tell everything so that he wouldn't get angry again. You'd think I was having fun out there. He snorted and continued eating. What are you going to do now? She forced herself to ask the question. Nothing, I'm back with my family. Now we'll live like before, he smiled. Do you think we can do it like we used to? It was all aflame inside. Why not? He raised his eyebrows as if he was surprised. John, I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do. I was just a weak woman with a child in my arms, so I gave in to temptation. She chose a different tactic. That's it, I'm back. Now the family is reunited. We'll live, raise our son. He looked in the corridor. The boy was nowhere to be found. Good, smiled Selena. She thought that it is not worth to inflame the situation. Time will pass, everything will be solved by itself. And where is your new boyfriend? The man froze, waiting for an answer. I do not know. It was the truth. That's good. He's gone. He probably knew I'd be back. John laughed. That night, Selena asked her husband if he would let her sleep with her son. He agreed, but just for that night. Mom, whispered Tom when they had already turned out the light. What? She realized the boy had a lot of questions. What's going to happen to us now? She could hear his voice shaking. Everything will be fine. She stroked her son's head. In the morning, the woman hurried to get up early to make breakfast. She didn't want to make anyone nervous. How wonderful it is. Got up. And here everything is already ready. Her husband came to the kitchen. No mead. She didn't turn to him. Selena is mine. He came over and hugged her from behind. What are you doing? Tom will say. She tried to push him away. Don't you dare try anything else, he said angrily, right in her face. I got it. She turned her back to the stove again. Selena cried quietly as John kissed her neck. I woke up and washed my face. Tom walked into the kitchen. Favorite son. John turned to the boy. Don't come near me, said the lad angrily. He saw the marks the man's fingers had left on his mother's neck. Why are you being so mean to me? His father thrust himself at him. Stop it, shouted Selena. Okay, I'm just kidding. Why are you starting? He immediately changed his mood, sitting down at the table. It went on like this all day, and at night, John grabbed her arm as she went to Tom's room. Where are you going? My husband missed you. He pulled her to him. You've been gone practically 13 years. I need to get used to it. She looked him in the eye, thinking it would make him feel better. But it didn't work. He just threw her on the bed. Selena just prayed that her son wouldn't walk in at this point. After all that, the man just turned away and snored. Selena went to the bathroom. She sat there for a couple hours. After that, she came out and headed to Tom. Mom, did he hit you in there? Her son asked. No, it's okay. She pulled him close to her. That night, the woman thought that next time she would call the police and they would take him away. And then came the thought of if she didn't make it in time, then what would he do to them? This morning, Selena could see that he had no pity for anyone, not her or her son. John, it's New Year's Eve. Come on, you're not going to act like this. She asked him this morning at breakfast. Okay, if you're going to be a goody two-shoes. He smiled at her again. Selena thought that he must have been beaten up, and now something has happened to his head. That's why he's acting like that. Tom, let's go decorate the Christmas tree, called out to her son's mother after dinner. It had been standing in their room like that since that evening. All right, ran the boy over to his mother. Joan hadn't been home all day. It was such a relief. Mom, why don't you complain to Grandma? Asked Tom. What are you doing? You can't do that under any circumstances. She will get very upset. Mom pressed her finger to her lips. Okay, but how long are we going to put up with this? He took the toy, and when he didn't hear the answer, he turned to his mom. Son, I'm sorry. I don't know, she cried. Why doesn't Oliver come to us? Is he afraid of him too? The boy didn't understand. I think something happened to him. She wiped away her tears. Was it his fault too? That's all my son ever called John. You know what I thought of? Let's pack our things. I have money, rent an apartment, and move out of his place. Selena's eyes widened. Why didn't she say anything when he left this morning? Tom rushed to his room, but they didn't have time to do anything. Her husband and father came home. He wasn't quite himself. Oh, family, he hiccuped. You need to get some sleep, Selena asked him. Okay, just with you. He took her hand, and they went to the couch. Tom felt so bad for his mother, and also that he couldn't do anything about it. John plopped down on the bed and pulled Selena with him. She didn't resist. He was in such a state that he fell asleep immediately. She lay there for a little longer and then went back to her son. "No, Tom, we are not going anywhere with you. He will find us everywhere, and it will be worse there." She hugged him. "He won't kill you." That was a mother's worst question. "I hope not," she thought to herself. She had made such a life for herself. In the evening, Selena and Tom sat at the table, waiting for the chimes to strike, just in time for the head of the family to wake up. "Okay, I'll sit with you," he said in a hoarse voice. Selena poured champagne for herself and him, and Tom had a splash of soda. At the sound of the clock, John raised his glass, winked at his wife, and drank. After that, he went back to bed. The woman and the boy exhaled with relief. The New Year's vacation passed more or less quietly. John was celebrating all these days, so he didn't care about anyone. He just sat in the kitchen for a while and then slept. Selena and Tom went out unhindered, walking around, coming back. "I wish he was dead." They went into the driveway one day. "Son, you can't say that," his mother whispered to him. "Can you do that to us?" He almost cried, though he hadn't done it for a long time. Quiet. She was so used to that word that she said it all the time. They entered the apartment. It was quiet. Selena went into Tom's room. They spent most of their time there now. "I'm hungry," her son showed her. "Now," she said with just her lips. Selena left the room and went to the kitchen. "Where have you been?" Stood and staggered her husband in the hallway. "John, please go get some sleep." She put her hands together. "What?" He wailed throughout the house. "Please," Selena cried. "What are you asking me to do?" He wrinkled his nose. "For you to leave me and Tom alone." She turned around. Her son was in the room. "Fuck you." He kicked her, and she flew off, hitting the wall. "You touch her." Tom saw everything. He felt so sorry for his mom. He stood there clenching his fists, but he couldn't do anything because he was afraid of him. "Go to your room before you get it," yelled his father at him. After that, he just walked over his wife, went to the kitchen, and then went back to sleep. "Mommy," whispered Tom. "Sonny, she's come to her senses. I'm going to call the police now." He was ready to do it. "No, you don't have to." She managed to get up. She was dizzy. After that, Selena lay down on the bed. Her son brought a wet towel. She put it on her head. "I promise you, we will leave tomorrow." She couldn't put herself and her son in any more danger. "I believe you, Mommy." He leaned on her chest and cried. "It's okay, honey. Everything will be fine. It can't go black all the time." Tears were flowing from her eyes. She didn't want to show them to her child. That afternoon, Selena installed a bolt in Tom's room that she had taken off the toilet door. "Do you think it will help us?" The child doubted it. "I don't know." Maybe Selena wasn't sure about it herself, but at least there was some protection. At night, Selena counted the money she had, enough to rent an apartment for a few months. She packed a bag where she put the essentials for herself and her son. There were also documents. Then she went to her room, closed the door, and sat down in a chair. "Mom, why don't you go to bed?" Tom asked. "I can't. I have a headache," she said. During the night, Selena heard John get up, but he didn't even come to their door. When Tom's alarm clock went off, she flinched. "Tom, get up," she pushed her son. They got dressed in the room, and when they were in the hallway, John came out. "Where are you going?" He leaned on the door jamb. Selena looked at him, trying to determine what state he was in. "For a walk," she said, and smiled. "Again? Not having a walk?" He grabbed her by the cloak. "Let Mama go," Tom shouted. "And you shut up in general. Don't take me out, or it will be worse." He made big eyes and looked at his son. Tom ran off, as everyone thought, to his room. "John, let go," Selena asked. She thought these angry outbursts would just come and go. "Why do you keep telling me to let go? Let go, let go, come on." He lifted her off the floor and threw her. Ah, it hurt. Selena thought she even blacked out for a moment. "Not enough. Let go some more, he kicked her. Get away from her. The boy came out of the kitchen, a knife blade glinting in his hand. Are you going to throw yourself at me? He winked at his son. At that moment, Selena regained consciousness. She swung the coat rack, which fell right on her husband. What? Everyone is against me. He looked around. Son, go to the room and shut yourself in there. Tried to shout mother, but from the throat came out a kind of wheeze. You still don't get it. He went back to his wife. I said get away from her. Tom didn't move. He was ready to be attacked. Yeah, now I'll deal with her first and then you. Puppy. He shook his wife. No. Selena was hit. She closed her eyes. Tom ran at his father. He knocked the knife out of his hands and pushed the boy away. He flew to the door of the room. I'm going to make you dance. He went to his wife again because he thought the boy had nothing left to give. She didn't move, so John decided to take a break and go to the kitchen. He did just that. The mother opened her eyes, saw her son lying in the hallway, not moving. Tom. She started to call out to him, but he didn't move. What are you yelling about? John came up to her. You can't handle anyone else, just a woman and a child. She couldn't open her eyes fully. What do you know who and what can I do with? He was looming again. No, I think you're a coward and always have been. Selena saw her son had moved and was now creeping into his room, so she needed to distract the man. What? I've never been a coward, but Oliver is one. He spit on the floor. Do you know where he is? His wife asked him. Of course I do. He's the one who got me hurt. We came to the shooting. We didn't expect them to have guns, and when they started shooting, Oliver pulled out his gun. 112, they hit the cars, and it was like they were dead or alive. He yelled, Oliver, 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 and he was gone too. He told it all with such anger that the drawer was flying in different directions. It was clear now how many years he had kept this anger in himself, and now he decided to express it. Did you just make that up? Selena wanted to bring him out of his memories. Naturally, everything was pinned on me, and I, like a fool, did not turn myself in. I thought that my friend covered for me, and he started making out with my wife. The trial hadn't been held yet, and you were already together, and my eyes blowed. I was scared and he helped me, Selena screamed. It's about to get even scarier. He leaned over her, taking her by the chin, just like when she met him. John, please. She saw him swinging. She squeezed her eyes shut. What, scared? He was mocking her. I never realized you had so much anger in you, Selena said with such contempt that she was disgusted. Do you know where your Oliver is? He was in her face. Where? She didn't think she was gonna hear anything good. The worms ate him a long time ago. No, I found him first, and we went to talk. And soon you'll be there with him. He put his hand around her neck, and Selena fainted again. John went to the kitchen. He noticed that Tom wasn't in the hallway. He wanted to go in and see him, but then he waved his hand. He wasn't going anywhere. Selena came to her senses, moaned, but called only her husband to her. That's it, let's go. He scooped her up. At this point, Tom heard it all, but he couldn't get up because he was under the bed. He just covered his eyes with his hands and cried. John was dragging Selena. She didn't have any strength to resist. She felt them go outside, and then he threw her into the car. No, not into the passenger compartment, but into the trunk. The woman felt her shoulder bump hard. Fear gripped every muscle, not only for herself, but for her son. He was alone. What would happen when John came back? God, please help Tom. May he be all right. She prayed quietly as the car moved. Selena felt her lips swell. She couldn't move them, she groaned. It was a long ride, and she dozed off because she was seasick and tired. She heard her husband's voice. He was carrying her again, but it must have been heavy, so he put her on the ground so that she could walk on her own. Selene felt the cold from the snow, but kept silent. She couldn't see anything with her eyes, Perhaps something had been thrown over her head. "Forgive me," she whispered, lips unmoving. "God will forgive." He pushed her ahead of him, Selena cried. She realized that now the man would stop at nothing. It's true what they say about those who have been to places not so far away, and then want to go back again. "Please come to your senses. We have a little son. How will he be without us?" "He will be put in an orphanage," the woman asked. "Why not without us? His mother is out partying and his father is at home. Him get used to it. It was hard to walk." But John grinned. Selena realized that they were no longer in the city. There was a lot of snow. Her husband knew exactly where they were going, or not, and he was driven by anger. Finally, they stopped. He pulled off what was on her head. Selene could see now that they were in a forest, with only white canvas and trees around them. "What, scared?" He took her by the chin. "Yes." She looked into his black eyes again. "So you know, if someone hurts me, they end up like this." He pulled out a rope. "What are you going to do?" She squealed out of control. On the car ride, the woman still had some hope that John would come to his senses. He just wanted to scare her into being dependent on him. But now, she could see that this wasn't a joke at all. "What do you think?" He pushed her and she felt the wood. "I'm just going to freeze out here, you monster," she cried. "No, you won't freeze. You won't have time. The wolves will eat you before that. Believe me, I know there are plenty of them here." He went on with his business. "You'll get it all back." She's out of arguments. "Think of how much pain I've been in all these years." Selena thought John was smiling. So much pleasure it all gave him. "You bastard. You said you loved me so much, and now what are you doing? Believe me, nothing good will come of this act for you. Even if I am eaten by wolves, I will not give you peace. I will torture you for the rest of your life." She shouted all this, and it seemed to herself that she had already gone crazy. Yes, yes, be deceived. He had tied the knot. "Help!" She shouted it into the night sky. "No one can hear you here. Even if you scream, for many kilometers there is no one and nothing. Only you and nature." He took her by the chin again. "Save me, ah!" Selena screamed as loud as she could. "Shut up!" He hit her. She passed out. Selena doesn't know how long she was unconscious. She woke up from the cold, her legs straight up with cramps, her own scream stuck in her throat. "Help!" She twisted her head around, but she couldn't see anything. The woman cried. She realized that her screams would not do any good, but would only make things worse. If there were any animals here that her husband had mentioned, they had already heard her. And now it was winter. Most likely wolves at this time are very hungry and angry. "Shoo!" She began to hiss. Her lips were not listening. Not only were they abrasions, but the cold was so cold. "Sheh! Get out of here!" She felt the presence of someone, or maybe it was just her imagination. And then she saw the glint in his eyes. Her insides clenched. Selena imagined the pack attacking her now. The wolves were closing the circle. She remembered a phrase from a book, but she could only see two of them. And then she heard a whistle and thought she saw a light. "Help! I'm here!" She started to make some noises. Selena thought she was screaming very loudly, but in reality, it was just a croak coming from her throat. Selena saw the beast scurry away as another one appeared where she was. It sort of barked, but it did so in an unusual way. She stood. She felt like she was already somewhere not here, because that couldn't be the case. The beast seemed to be fighting for prey. "Selene!" She heard Oliver's voice. At that moment, the woman thought that everything had already happened and she was gone. And she felt nothing, because it was very cold, and so much adrenaline was released into the bloodstream. She lost consciousness again. "Love, remember I always told you I'd be there for you no matter what happened to you." She heard him through the fog. "Oliver." She wanted to touch him, but at the last moment she pulled her hand away because she realized she was dreaming. "Love, wake up." His voice was blurry and sounded far away. Selena felt warm. She groaned. then opened her eyes. She looked around. It was a house, log walls, whitewashed ceiling. "John!" she called out. She thought her torment continued. He had taken pity, untied her, and now he had brought her here. "Selene, have you come to your senses?" Oliver entered the room. "It can't be. Am I dead or asleep?" The woman pinched herself. She wanted to raise herself, but couldn't do it. Her legs hurt. "Calm down. It's me." He crouched on the edge of the bed. She took his hand in hers, pressed it to her cheek, and sobbed. Apparently, John's brains had atrophied so much that he'd decided to take everyone to the same place. He leaned over and kissed her hair. "Where were you? Why didn't you come to us, protect us?" she cried, her cheeks beginning to burn. "I couldn't. But that's not the point. I need to rub you again." He touched the spot where her cheeks burned. "What's wrong with me?" She touched her hand where he had touched her cheeks. It hurt like a burn. "Your face is a little frostbitten, but your legs are worse." Oliver pulled back the blanket, and Selena looked at her limbs, which were red. "Wow, a little." She leaned back on the pillow, and the man started rubbing something greasy on her. "Now let's get this done. You'll be good as new in a week," Oliver smiled. "What's that?" She wrinkled her nose and plugged it with her fingers. "It's a super remedy, badger fat. It's a cure for everything." He showed her the jar, which had only a little left in it. "Oliver, what are you doing here? How did you find me?" She felt much better now that her feet and face were smeared. "Selena, I'll tell you everything, but a little later. You're still weak, not ready." He put her back on the bed. "Wolf." She made big eyes and looked somewhere behind Oliver. "What?" He turned around. There was indeed a wolf sitting on the doorstep, but it wasn't quite like that. "I'm scared." She couldn't stop the terror from coming. "Don't be afraid. It's Polkan." He made a gesture. The animal approached. "Am I in a fairy tale?" She looked at her man with big eyes. "No, it's really a wolf, but a tame one." He patted it behind the ears. After that, Oliver left, but quickly returned, a tray with a bowl of porridge and tea in his hands. Selena felt like she hadn't eaten anything in a while. "Don't." She took the spoon from his hands when he wanted to feed her himself. "Let's do it yourself then." He nodded his head and sat down next to the bed. "Tom," after the first spoonful, she suddenly looked up at the man. "What?" He stirred too. He stayed at home. Selena wanted to set her plate aside, but Oliver did not let her do it. "I guess he won't be interested in the guy without you." He gestured for her to eat. "God, how long will all this last?" The porridge was very tasty. The woman ate everything, drank tea. "Need to sleep." He helped her lie down and covered her with a blanket. "We'll find him, won't we?" She was talking about her son. "Of course, don't even think about bad things." The man kissed her. In the evening, when Selena was much better, Oliver rubbed her again with badger fat. "You're so thoughtful." She sat up in bed. "Can you get up?" He gave her a hand. "Let's try," the woman agreed. Selena got to her feet, Oliver supporting her, and they walked out of the room and into the small kitchen. There was a stove, a table, and carved benches. "Do you like it?" He sat her down on one of them. "Very much. Tell me all about it," she asked. Then, at the end of August, I went to buy Tom a gift for September 1. He began to recall and put the kettle on, began to arrange cups, saucers, and cookies on the table. "Well, what are you silent again?" She waited for the continuation. I came to the store, got out of the car, and there was John. He appeared suddenly, so I was a little scared. Oliver realized that if Selena asked her husband something, he could tell her everything in a heartbeat. I had the same thing. She lowered her eyes. So we hugged. He said he'd recently gotten out. I congratulated him, and then we went to a cafe to celebrate. He was silent again. "Is that hard for you to remember or what?" She was worried about the man. We sat there until almost midnight, and then John asked to take him to one of the villages that were near the city. Oliver looked at the woman and smiled. He realized that everything he would tell her next would not please her very much. "But you've been drinking," she made big eyes. "Just a little bit. We left the place, got in the car. Your husband looked normal, let's go." Oliver saw that the kettle was boiling, began to pour boiling water into cups. "Well, enough with the stories at such long intervals," Selena asked him. She didn't want any more tea, only to know what happened to her beloved then. "Well, he showed me the way. Ahead showed the forest. I was surprised. What village could be in the forest? But John assured me that now we will pass it, and there everything will be just. It is the shortest road." He sat down next to the woman he loved and took her hand. "And you came to this forest?" She guessed. "Yeah, I don't know what John's connection to this place is. Maybe it's where they brought him in the 90s for a showdown. But the fact remains, he lowered his eyes." "What did he do to you?" Selena put her palms to her mouth. "Asked me to stop, was done. He got out of the car. I followed him. Then he shot me." Oliver didn't look her in the eye. "How?" It was horrible to even imagine it. "In his legs." He lifted his pants. There was a scar on each leg. "Beloved," she pressed herself against him. "And then I did the same thing I did to you. But in your case, you would have either frozen or been eaten. I had a nasty bug that you can't get rid of, and it hurt like hell. I don't know how long I spent in there, delirious, awake and unconscious. But I was lucky Celine thought he was crying. Just as I did, she kissed him. He probably agreed with her. And who rescued you?" She was waiting for the rest. "The local forester. He was here that week, in this very cabin. He had to get everything ready for winter, so he came. And Polkan, his own wolf, which he had tamed, had found me. What one man can do." She thought of her son again. "Yeah, Grandpa Jacob got me here, and then he nursed me back to health. I was delirious for days. I thought I was somewhere else in the world. And the old man thought we were bandits, sorting things out here, and I got such a terrible execution." The man smiled. "And then, why didn't you come back?" She kept waiting for that answer. Afraid, Oliver didn't hide it. "That's understandable." She turned away from the window, tears streaming from her eyes. "I decided to live here for a while, let him think I was dead, so it would be easier for everyone." He didn't touch Selena, realizing that it wasn't easy for her either. "Didn't you think about me?" She asked the big question. "Of course I did, every day. But first of all, I couldn't get up for a long time. And secondly, how could I help you? Because we're nobody to each other." He wanted to hold her against him so badly that he squeezed his eyes shut. "Where is your grandfather Jacob now?" She decided to change the subject. "In the village, I guess," he shrugged. "Okay, buddy, calm down, it's going to be okay." Grandpa walked into the kitchen. Selena sat looking at him. "Hello," she said quietly. "I see the frost didn't spare you." He pointed at his cheeks, which, apparently, were also frostbitten. "Oliver is helping me." She looked at the jar of badger fat. "That's right, that's good." He sat down on the edge of the bench. "Grandpa Jacob, we have to get out of here. Selena's son is staying there, and he's been looking to the old man for support, as usual, for the last few months." "I have transportation," he said slyly. "Can you help me?" Oliver was glad. "Sure." The old man clapped himself on his knees. "Come with me." They went outside, went to where the woodpile was. When they were close, Oliver stopped. "Well, what are you up to?" The grandfather took one hand to the tarp that hung from the roof. Now, a man came up. They yanked it once, another, when it fell. Then in front of the men was something like a garage, only cold. "Here it is, my dear, never let me down." Grandpa Jacob stroked the snowmobile. "Where did he get all this good stuff?" Oliver wondered. Grateful hunters, though not new, but on the move, he drove it from where it stood. All day, he and his grandfather worked on the machinery. They had to grease the chain, fill it with fuel, check if everything worked. When the old man was sure of everything, he told the guests to dress warmly. Neither of them had warm clothes. Grandpa had found and brought some for Oliver, but Selena was wrapped in what she had. Jacob took the wheel, then the woman got in, and Oliver followed in the back. "Let's go," Grandpa shouted, and the snowmobile started off. Selena didn't realize where they were at all, and she couldn't see anything now. The snowmobile was kicking up clouds of snow that covered everything: eyes, nose, and mouth. She hid behind Jacob's grandfather, patient. "Well, here we are." He drove them almost all the way to town. "Thank you for everything. We'll see each other again." Oliver shook his hand. "We promise," Selena supported him. "Okay, buddy, calm down. It's going to be okay." Grandpa walked into the kitchen. Selena sat looking at him. "Hello," she said quietly. "I see the frost didn't spare you." He pointed at his cheeks, which, apparently, were also frostbitten. "Oliver is helping me." She looked at the jar of badger fat. "That's right, that's good." He sat down on the edge of the bench. "Grandpa Jacob, we have to get out of here. Selena's son is staying there, and he's been looking to the old man for support, as usual, for the last few months." "I have transportation," he said slyly. "Can you help me?" Oliver was glad. "Sure." The old man clapped himself on his knees. "Come with me." They went outside, went to where the woodpile was. When they were close, Oliver stopped. "Well, what are you up to?" The grandfather took one hand to the tarp that hung from the roof. Now, a man came up. They yanked it once, another, when it fell. Then in front of the men was something like a garage, only cold. "Here it is, my dear, never let me down." Grandpa Jacob stroked the snowmobile. "Where did he get all this good stuff?" Oliver wondered. Grateful hunters, though not new, but on the move, he drove it from where it stood. All day, he and his grandfather worked on the machinery. They had to grease the chain, fill it with fuel, check if everything worked. When the old man was sure of everything, he told the guests to dress warmly. Neither of them had warm clothes. Grandpa had found and brought some for Oliver, but Selena was wrapped in what she had. Jacob took the wheel, then the woman got in, and Oliver followed in the back. "Let's go," Grandpa shouted, and the snowmobile started off. Selena didn't realize where they were at all, and she couldn't see anything now. The snowmobile was kicking up clouds of snow that covered everything: eyes, nose, and mouth. She hid behind Jacob's grandfather, patient. "Well, here we are." He drove them almost all the way to town. "Thank you for everything. We'll see each other again." Oliver shook his hand. "We promise," Selena supported him. Now it was necessary to get to the nearest branch. It was dangerous to go home. "Hello." The woman approached one of the men in uniform who stood at the traffic police post, which the couple reached on foot. "Zdorovi wish," the man said. He examined the woman. She was wearing such an outfit that she looked more like a hobo. She looked more like a vagrant, rather than someone who needed real help. "We need help. My husband took me into the woods and left me there." She didn't elaborate. "It was in the 90s when they went there to bury everyone. The guy was young. He probably saw a lot of action movies, so he laughed at what he didn't know. Anyway," Oliver came up. "We need a ride to the department. Can you give us a ride?" "Sure." He came up to his partner, said something, got behind the wheel of the car, and they drove off. It wasn't that close to the nearest department. When they stopped, they got out of the car, thanked the young man. "Listen, how can we without documents? They will say that we are beggars. They will not let us in. And what's more, they will lock us up." Selena began to doubt. "Let's go. Let's tell the whole truth. If they don't believe us, then we'll deal with it later." He took her hand. They went in. They were escorted to an office where they told everything, and when they saw that they were believed, they showed all their scars and wounds. The man who took them in said that immediate action would be taken. Now home, Selena hurried, for she still didn't know where her baby was. She hoped he was home, which she had warned the staff about, because John could be expected to do anything. She and Oliver made it safely to the yard where they had once lived. They were advised to sit in the neighbor's driveway. They were in a state that their own mother wouldn't recognize. So the couple did. They saw John being led out under their arms. Tom wasn't with them. Selena wanted to rush over to ask where her boy was, but Oliver held her back. "We'll find him ourselves. He's a smart boy," he assured the woman. When they got into the apartment, the place was turned upside down. What was he looking for? The landlady couldn't understand. "What do you mean?" "Money, jewelry." Oliver came up to her. "We need to think about where Tom might be." She looked up at him. "Let's change first," he laughed. Yeah, Selena wasn't paying attention to what outfit she was wearing, how she looked. Right now, the important thing was different. They quickly found what they needed, now sitting in the kitchen, both of them with their phones in their hands. "Call your parents," Oliver asked. No, he knew he couldn't go to them, that his grandmother would be nervous. She shook her head negatively. He had a scare. One woman he loved was taken away. He went to another, Oliver really thought. No, let's call his friends first. She started dialing the phones of his parents and the guys her son was friends with, but no one had seen him all this time. He couldn't have taken him somewhere too. The man looked at her. "I don't even think about it. Maybe search the basements and attics." Selena threw out options. "Are you sure?" It was winter, so Oliver doubted very much that Tom could do that. "No," she lowered her head. "It'll be okay. Give me the phone." He took her machine, dialed the number. "Where are you calling from?" She wanted to take the phone away from him, but it was already answered. "Hello, how are you?" Oliver was very polite. "Yeah, we were coming to see you too." He smiled and looked at Selena. "Well, see you later." He pressed the red button. "Oliver, why?" She looked at the phone screen where her mother's number was written. "They have Tom," the man said coldly. "What?" She couldn't believe it was that simple. "When I asked how things were going, your mother said she was baking cakes for her grandson, and as I understand it, she doesn't have any other grandchildren besides your son, right?" He stood up and went into the room. "You told her to call them right away," she cried. "Nothing to shed tears. Get ready. Let's go." He was already waiting for her in the hallway. A few hours later, they were already going up to the floor where her parents lived. Selena was only afraid of one thing: if her son told his grandparents everything, how she would explain it all to them. She pressed the bell button. "Who is it?" And again that native voice. Mom opened, pulled a smile on the woman's face. "Hello, dears. Where have you been so long? And how could you send a child alone to us? It's winter outside, and what if something would have happened?" From the doorstep began to reprimand the mother. Selena realized that Tom had lied to her grandmother. She was happy that he had listened to her and done the right thing. "Mom," he ran out into the hallway. "Hi." Oliver held out his hand, but Tom didn't even pay attention to him. "Son, come on." "That's how Oliver," she asked. "It's all his fault. Did you hear what he said?" He didn't want to talk. "Honey, everything happened as it happened. There's nothing you can do about it now. You have to move on. Oliver helped me. He loves us." Selena realized that she was standing there talking to her son. She waited a little longer and then thought that time would pass. Things would get better again. Together they all walked to the room where Grandma was cutting a cake. They had tea, and when the women were in the kitchen, the mother looked sternly at her daughter. "Who is this one?" She repeated her grandson's words. "Mom, it didn't matter anymore." Selene didn't want the woman to know about such a shameful moment in her life. "Daughter, we have always been close to you. Why won't you tell me?" Her mother turned her to face her and ran her hand over her cheek, which had recently stopped hurting. "Mom, it's over now. Everything will be okay now." Selena hugged her. "Okay, I hope someday you'll tell me all this." A tear rolled down her cheek. The woman saw how her grandson came to her. It was winter, and he was wearing sneakers and a windbreaker. There was a bruise on his cheekbone, At first, she wanted to sound the alarm, thought Oliver might have done it. But when the boy told her that his mom and dad had sent him alone to his grandmother's house, she didn't ask too many questions. She wanted to bide her time. She realized that something terrible had happened, but since her daughter did not tell her anything, she decided not to bother her with questions. The family went home. The apartment needed a lot of redecorating because John had broken everything. Maybe we should sell this apartment with so many bad reminders? Oliver asked her. I was thinking the same thing, but let's wait a little while for things to settle down, she asked him. I hope you won't mind divorcing that bastard now. They stood in the hallway and hugged. Of course not, she kissed his chin. I was so afraid of losing you, he almost cried. I will always be with you. Selena realized that here he was, her true and only man. Will you marry me? He knew the answer, but still, he wanted to hear it. Yes, she felt that they were already connected, but that wasn't enough for her. John was taken into custody. Selena and Oliver detailed everything he'd done. Jacob's grandfather was a witness. At the trial, the man had been declared insane, and it had been decided that he should be evaluated in a mental institution. What did he accomplish? Oliver grinned when he and Selena got home. Everything was fine now. The man and woman had sold the apartment where they'd once lived, and now they were looking for a new place to live. Dad, I'm sorry. Tom came to him. It's been a year since they met at Grandma's. He hugged the boy. Selena got in. She studied by correspondence, and in the meantime, she had time to do everything at home. Oliver was doing well. His business was growing. He no longer rented a garage and bought his own premises, which was in the city limits. Who's going to tell me who has an accounting degree? They were lying in bed in the evening talking. He's not here yet, she laughed. I'm serious. I need an accountant, and I think a family contract would be just right. He turned to her. Will you hire Tom? He's been asking for a job for a long time. He decided to finish 9 grades and then go to school to be a motor mechanic to help his father. Why not? Oliver wondered why he hadn't asked him himself. Then it was agreed. Everything was fine in the family now. They were standing at the line. Tom was graduating from high school. When one of the girls in a beautiful uniform read a poem, Selena suddenly felt sick. What's the matter with you? Her husband picked up on it. Probably the sun. The woman didn't realize it herself. I don't think the sun has anything to do with it, Oliver winked at her. You think? She knew what he meant. I'm sure. The man walked over to Tom, whispered something in his ear. He turned and showed his mom the class. What did you say to him? The wife was shocked. Nothing, let's go. He took her under his arm, and they walked out of the schoolyard. 7 months later, the family heard the cries of the little princess they all adored. We should go to the woods and visit Jacob's grandfather, Oliver said, his daughter almost 2 years old by then. Why not? Tom agreed, because he already knew the story of what had happened to his parents. True, he had not been told it in detail, but in general terms. Okay, Selena took the baby in her arms. They left the house, got in the car, and all together they headed to the place where it had once been so painful and scary. Grandpa Jacob. Oliver entered the hut. No one answered him. Do you know where he lives in the village? His wife asked him. No, he did not say. I was only here. They went out into the yard. There wasn't much wood in the woodpile. Oliver walked inside. He pulled back the tarpaulin as he did then. The snowmobile was standing there. I think our grandfather is gone, he said as he looked at the equipment. What makes you think that? Selena didn't understand. She watched her daughter walk around and look at everything around her. The chain is practically rusted. He pointed to the piece. It was summer now. Maybe he just hadn't been working on it. That was obvious. No, you didn't see how much he loved that vehicle. Fiddled with it like a child. He couldn't have let it run like that, Oliver was sure. And though they didn't know exactly where the village was, they made their way around the forest and drove to the first settlement. As soon as they said who they were looking for, they were immediately shown Jacob's house and told that he had died last summer. It's a shame we didn't visit him sooner, Celine sighed at the cemetery. It's okay, this old man will stay with me forever right here. He patted his chest on the left side. And I have. At this point, the little girl in her mom's arms cried, as if sensing her mood. That's it, time to go home. Oliver hugged the family. Yes, his wife clung to him. Tom stood looking at the cross that stood on his grandfather's grave. Can I borrow his snowmobile? He asked his father. Who knows now? The man was surprised at such eagerness. They returned to the village, to the same house. Jacob had a daughter and granddaughter staying with him. Hello. Tom came through the wicket door. Hello. A young girl came out to him. The boy stood looking at her and was silent. She seemed so beautiful to him. Well, ask her why you came, his father hurried him up. Ah, yes, he told her. He told her that he could repair the equipment and, if necessary, return it to the family. She laughed, which made her even more beautiful. I think someone will be coming here very often, Selena whispered to her husband. I noticed too. He looked at his son. He was falling in love for the first time. They all drove home together. Tom didn't take the snowmobile. They had agreed with William that he would build it right there in the woods, and she would help in any way she could. Mom, I'm gone. He left the apartment. Well, I've lived to be a bride, Selena said in the hallway. Wait, you still have fiancés ahead of you. Oliver pointed at his daughter. I hope it won't happen very soon. She laughed and went to the kitchen. In the evening, the mother and father arrived. They were visiting the children often now. They helped with their granddaughter and just wanted to have some fun. Daughter, why didn't you tell us where and with whom you went? Her father asked her. What? Selena was stunned. She didn't expect that question to come up after all these years. Well, from Sam. He called me then, the man admitted. What did he say? She was really curious. Said you'd met some prisoner who'd done time for causing the death of his girlfriend. He didn't get much time. It was proved he was only vicariously liable. His father didn't look at her. That was all in the past. Selena, at this point, regretted not asking anyone back, then what John's fault was. Okay, no more pestering, got up, and left the room to her parents' room. But there was one silver lining to the story. If she hadn't left with him then, she never would have met Oliver, and he's the most wonderful man she's ever met.